So today we're going to start painting some ghosts with two different effects of painting them.
Yeah.
So there's the contrasty type of paints from Games Workshop that's oxide and I think, what is it? Night Haunt Gloom.
Okay.
So those are more contrasty ways to paint it. So I'm going to try it on this model that's primed in Vallejo Gray.
Okay.
Because you need grays or whites to do it.
Yeah.
And then the other one that's primed in black, I'm going to use actual paints instead of the contrast paints to make it look ghosty with blue.
Okay.
So I'm going to do my first paint actually on this Torchbearer from Fallen Avalon.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it in... Actually, I'll try the skin first. So the skin, I'm going to use Night Haunt Gloom on.
Okay.
First for her. And then for the skin for the queen from Bloodborne.
Yeah.
The Yharnam Queen. She's from the Chalice Dungeon.
Ah, right.
I'm going to use blue-gray.
Okay.
So I got the blue-gray on her skin.
Yep. Well, it's a little hard to see because the model's primed in black, but...
That's the blue-gray.
Yep. It's a nice color.
And then for the Torchbearer, I used Night Haunt Bloom.
Yep.
For her. Which is just a watery contrast paint.
Yeah.
So the next step I'm going to do for the Torchbearer, I'm going to use oxide.
Yep.
To make it look ghosty.
Cool.
And that's going to go on her cloak. Basically.
Yeah.
And for the Yharnam Queen, for her dress, most of it, I'm going to use pale green blue.
Okay. Which is a grayish, like a light grayish blue, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I got the dress done and her veil.
Yeah, looks nice.
And that was with the pale gray blue.
Yep.
So it's like a bluey white color if you don't want to do white, because sometimes white's a pain to work with.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of still looks like the picture too.
Yep.
And then her next color will be Fernesian Gray.
Yep.
I'll set it out, and that will be for her handkerchief and the back of her veil.
Yep. Cool.
And then for the Torchbearer, the oxide's on her clothes to make it look like it's ghost effect.
Yeah, it looks nice.
And her next paint would be the contrast erythamic blue.
Cool.
And I'm going to put that on her hair.
Okay.
To give it another ghost effect.
Cool. And we'll come back and see how it looks.
So I did the Fernesian Gray on the back of the veil.
Yep. Looks nice.
And on her hands, and then right there by the stomach.
Cool.
And then I did the erythematic blue for her hair.
Cool. That looks nice.
So that's all contrast, basically paints on there now.
Yeah.
So the queen's done. I'm just going to use Rhinox Hide for the base.
Okay.
To finish that up, then I'll go into highlights for her after.
Cool.
And see his stuff around her, so I'm going to use Rhinox Hide for the base on her too.
Okay.
And then I'm going to use Dark Sea Green for the rocks on her base.
Cool.
And then I'll use Scale 75, a flat one for the sign in the back.
Cool.
I don't want it too bright because then it take attention from the model a little bit.
Absolutely.
So I use Scale 75 walnut for that.
Okay.
I use that for wood a lot. And then for the vines that are going around on the base too, I'm going to use olive green.
Okay.
So then I'll finish that up and then we'll see what it looks like. So I just put the Rhinox Hide on the base for the queen.
Yep.
So she's ready to be highlighted.
Looks good.
Now I don't use shades or washes on them because it looks a little cloudy when you put it that way, and it's hard to bring back up and give it the ghost effect.
Okay.
Sure, there's a lot better painters that can use blending and stuff you can do, but I'm not going to try to do that.
Okay.
And then I put the wood on her torch and the
Nice.
sign. Did the base, the greens with the vines too,
Yeah,
and
cool.
then the rocks. The problem using the contrast with this is you have to be careful not to nick anything because it's a pain to fix it. But
Yeah.
if you do, you can always go back and use some of the colors that I used for the queen to do touch-ups
Right.
over the contrast because it's hard to paint over paint with contrast paint.
Right.
And I also put Abaddon on the flame because I'm going to do some color shift, and
Yeah.
you need a shiny black for it to activate.
Yeah.
So next step for her, I'm actually going to take the first layer of color shift, tropical green, and put it on the black to make it look like color shift flame
Cool.
for her. And for the queen, I'm going to highlight her skin right now.
Okay.
So, because it's not washed, I'm not going to go back over with blue-gray.
Right.
I'm going to go with light green-blue over the skin.
Okay.
And then for the final highlight on the skin, I'll take this color I used for the dress and use pale gray-blue
Nice.
for it. So I'm going to do those steps now and show you what you look like. So for the queen, I just did her face. These are colors I said before with the light green-blue and the pale gray.
Yep.
So her face and her arms are done.
Looks nice.
And then for the torchbearer, I just did the tropical green color shift on the flame.
Nice.
I know. Sometimes it takes a couple layers to put it on so it gets brighter, but I'm going to put that first.
Yep.
And then if it needs to be brighter, I'll use the other color shift paints on it too.
Yeah.
So her next step is I'm just going to wash the vines and the wood in camo shade to give it a more dirtier green
Yeah.
to it. And I got to be careful not to hit the contrast paint again because you don't want to take away from the ghost.
Yeah.
If it's a little tough and you're afraid of nicking it, you can always do the background first, then do the ghost.
Yeah.
It might be easier. So that. And then for the queen, I'm going to go over the Fernesian gray I did on the back of the veil and her napkin there, or handkerchief, and the stomach there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go over it with blue horror.
Nice.
And for the final highlight after blue horror, I'm going to use silver gray
Okay.
to give it a little white to it.
Yeah. So you'll do that and come back and show us how it looks.
And also, I always keep, sometimes if I have reference. So that's kind of like what the ghost effect's going to look like on the contrast one.
Yep. Nice.
And then for the one that's just paint, it's a little bit of different of tone, but that's just with paint on it.
Yeah.
So it gives me a reference of how I did it before.
Very cool. Cool.
So I went back over the back of her veil and her stomach and her hands
Yep.
with the blue horror
Looks nice.
first. And then for the layer on top of that, I put silver gray just on the edges.
Nice. That came out really nice.
So that part's done.
Cool.
If you even wanted to brighten it up a little bit more, like on some of like her veil that has iron or metal on it, you could take a really light white metal and put it on too to give it a little more shine.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to leave it as that.
Yeah.
And then for the ghost, over here, the torchbearer, I just did the camo shade on everything but the ghost, just to give it a little green shade to it.
Yeah.
So even the wood, all the basing and stuff too.
Yeah, we use that wash on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't use any non-oil on the base. I just did the same thing, the camo shade on the base.
Okay.
Being careful not to nick it.
Cool.
So for the queen, next, I'm going to do her gown now. So that was originally pale gray blue.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do pale gray blue and silver gray together in a mix. It's going to be 50-50. It doesn't have to be exact. You could say 50-50 is usually good.
Okay.
So I'll do that. And then once I'm done with that, I'll go over the highlights with silver gray
Okay.
after the 50-50 mix. And then for the edge highlights, I'll do ivory
Okay.
on it. So then her dress would be done
Cool.
after that. And next for the ghost, her skin we did with Night Haunt Gloom.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to what we did for the skin for the ghost originally for the queen.
Yeah.
and we'll go and do blue-gray over the night hunt.
Yep.
And then for the highlight for the skin, the final one will be light green-blue.
Cool.
So I'll show you what that looks like when we're done. So I got the layers up on the dress now. That we did the pale, we started with the pale gray blue.
Yep.
So then the highlight was the 50-50 mix with the silver gray.
Yep.
And the pale blue. There. So there. And then the final highlight was silver gray on top of that.
Yep.
And then
Nice.
ivory on the very tips of stuff too. So
You can see in the light, really pops, looks nice.
yep. So I just have to finish the basing on her, and then there's some blood splatter on the front of her.
Okay.
So the basing is just a mix of some rocks and coal, and so we got some dried leaves there.
Yeah. Crushed
So
up
I'm just going to
glitter.
put some school glue on there and put that on there.
Yep, just regular old white school glue.
And on the blood effects on the front, it's like the blood effects we did in the other painting videos. I'll take the blood and then use a straw and blow it on there so it splatters.
Yeah.
And then I'll show you what she looks like when she's done.
Nice.
If you want to see how the blood splatter works, it's in our other videos too.
Yes. It's in our other painting videos.
Okay. And then for the torchbearer, I did her skin with the blue-gray
Okay.
and then light green-blue over top of it.
Perfect.
So
Oh,
that's
awesome.
her skin.
Yeah. Looks really good.
And then next for her, I'm going to do her hair and her cloak. So I'm just going to take the silver gray we used on the queen and go over the cloak with the silver gray on the highlights.
Yep.
Same with the hair.
Yep.
And then that's the final highlight on it. Same with the dress. I'll just use the ivory over top.
Nice.
And then I'll show you what it looks like when that's done. So I finished the basing on the queen.
Nice.
So
It
the
looks
rocks
good.
and the leaves.
Yeah. that
And then I
looks
just did the blood splatter on the front there. So it's like the card.
cool.
So she's done. Now she just has to get coated.
And that's the card for reference.
So I'm gonna put a matte coat on her from Vallejo too.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Matte or flat? I think I'm actually gonna do flat because I'll even dull it down a little bit more.
Okay. Sounds good.
And then the rim I'm just gonna paint in Abaddon black.
Okay. Cool.
And for the torchbearer, I did the end of her ghost effects now. I did the silver gray on the highlights.
Okay.
Around there?
Pops in the light. That looks good.
And then the final highlight was the ivory from Vallejo 2 model color.
Cool.
So that's all the ghost effects now done.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do the rocks too. So the rocks, I'll do dark sea gray over top of them again.
Yeah.
And then I'll put basilic gray over top of it.
Yeah.
And then if I want another highlight, I might probably put that to London gray.
Okay. We use those a lot.
Yeah, for stone.
Yeah.
They're pretty good. And then for the vines, I'll go back over it because I put shade on that. I'll go back over it with olive green.
Yep.
And for the highlight for that, I'll go over it with golden olive.
Awesome.
I'm not going to go too high with the highlights with that because I want the ghosts to be more of the center.
Yep.
And then for walnut, on the sign and her torch, I'll go back over it with that too.
Yep.
And then the edge highlight I'll do with Arabic shadow on top of the walnut.
Nice.
I'll also have some little posts there. Looks like metallic in there.
Yep.
So I'll use lead belts here on top of that.
Okay.
Just to put the metal on there. And then that would be all the basing on it and then the post.
Okay.
And then for the color shift, I'll go back over it with tropical green.
Okay.
And then you got to let it dry. And then I'll go over it to brighten it up a bit with burning gold
Okay.
at like the very edges of it.
Cool.
So then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So I did the vines on the ghost now too, on the torchbearer, and the rocks and the sign too.
Looks good.
I also did the burning gold on the flame too, so in light, the color shift, you'll see a little bit of red in there.
Yeah, nice. Looks cool.
So she's done now. Oh, I also put I didn't use lead belcher, but I used iron hand steel on the little nails in the post there.
Nice.
And all the paints that we used before we said for the rock and the greens too.
Yep.
And now I just gotta paint the rim of it, and then I'm gonna coat that with flat coat too. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's coated, and then it'll be done.
Awesome.
So we finish up the queen now too. She's done.
Yeah, looks good.
Alright. And then I coated her with flat clear coating.
Yep.
So she's done. And then for the torchbearer, she has the flat coating on her too.
Yeah.
And then I just, when you coat it flat, the color shift, you have to paint back over it with the same color. So I went back over it after I coated it with the burning gold again.
Yeah.
Just to bring up the color shift a bit.
Yeah.
But then
Cool.
it's
That's
done
awesome.
too.
Nice.
And that was the torchbearer.
Cool.
So we'll be using the queen in our next Bloodborne game soon.
Yes, we will.
In the dungeon. And then the torchbearer will be up in the Etsy store soon.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching the video.
And then next time, Raven's going to do color shift on Worm, I think it is.
Yes, I am. From Fall of Babylon.
Okay.
See you next time.
See ya.